All right, welcome everyone to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host, Carla Duke, and today I'm joined by Taylor Hurst. Taylor is a senior associate at Konvoy Ventures, which is an early stage esports and gaming VC firm based in Denver, Colorado. He stuck out to me though because of his Twitter presence and his great awareness of the shifts that are happening in the gaming industry. And he produces great content that highlights the statistics and the trends that we're seeing today in gaming. So today I'll be talking to Taylor all about Roblox, Fortnite, the metaverse, anything gaming related, investing, and any advice and tips he has for investors and people seeking investment. And yeah, anyone that is wanting to understand some of the trends that are happening that we'll see throughout this year. So thanks for joining me today, Taylor. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
Yeah, so there's a few areas I want to dig deep into, and I think what I've seen the most and what I'd love to hear your kind of take on so I think Roblox is a very underrated game platform. Whatever they're doing is amazing. Their audience is very young, but I think they're doing some really interesting stuff. And I'd just love to hear your perspective from the kind of people that you're surrounded by, like explaining what is Roblox and what are they doing that's really interesting.
Yeah, so Roblox is a UGC platform at its core. It is built not to Roblox wasn't built to develop games, but instead to build the tools and the distribution for games that are built on Roblox. The platform utilizes the Roblox Studio, which is built in the Lua language, which gives anybody access to all the tools and all the infrastructure that Roblox provides, and allows them to freely build and monetize their games. What's really interesting about it is that it's created this massive community online where the next generation of gamers don't really seem to be playing specific games like I did, where I grew up playing 007 on the N64, and then I played all the Call of Duty and Halo franchises. They all migrated to an individual platform. Like their access ecosystem is Roblox, and for them it's more than just a game platform. It's where they socialize and hang out with their friends as well, because every environment and game on Roblox doesn't have a start and end point. Some of them are legitimate areas to just be with your friends and explore. And the platform is typically seen as a more almost childish platform, but the thing is they've continually expanded their suite of tools, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at the depth of games that are able to be created on Roblox in the next few years. And it's going to be something where they're going to have almost monopolized a generation of users, where this is actually going to be one of the better places to build and distribute games, because the hardest part about making a successful game is getting users. And Roblox has all the users with 31 million daily active users, and you're not going to get that anywhere else. Releasing on Xbox, you have to pay for marketing dollars. Releasing on Steam, same thing. Mobile, I mean, it's one of the most competitive ecosystems for distributing a game that there could be. So Roblox is really built, and it really has just been this slow and steady process for them, where just every year it's like they were gaining a little bit more traction, and now they're just at a point of scale where they've just created the platform for a specific generation. And that's what's super interesting about it. And we're seeing more and more people creating games on it, and the games that are being created are getting much deeper and much better.
Totally. I think it's really interesting to see just how the quality of the games has changed over the last decade. And now they're actually reaching this inflection point where the quality that they're able to produce is comparable to some AAA titles. And I think that's an interesting point. I wonder though, because it kind of seems similar to Facebook in the sense when Farmville became huge on the platform, and kind of Facebook as a platform became this incubator for a series of games. Do you see it similar in terms of that, like a social platform?
Yeah, exactly. Because Roblox and Facebook were similar in the sense that they just built the platform and the distribution. They don't build any of their own games. And what they want to do is just say, hey, here's all the tools to use. Here's the platform to distribute on. We already have the critical mass of users. Release them and build them here. And that is what's really interesting about this. I think Facebook kind of stepped back from this space and, obviously wanted to move into more of a social platform than a game platform. And it's kind of interesting. Roblox started as a game platform, is now becoming a social platform as well. So they're very similar, but seem to be almost coming from a different direction.
Totally. So Fortnite, I feel like is doing similar things where kind of social connections, the main area that drives people to the platform. It's not really about the game per se. It's about meeting with your friends and hanging out. And I do see similarities to a social platform and games like Fortnite, like a battle royale genre. Do you like, but I wouldn't consider Fortnite a platform. Do you feel the same way? Like, what are the differences between a game like Fortnite and Roblox?
So Fortnite's interesting because Fortnite started as a game. Roblox always started as a platform. So, similar to how Roblox and Facebook were coming from different directions, Roblox and Fortnite are as well. But I think that both of them have the end goal of becoming a platform. And we've seen this now with obviously Roblox started with the development tools, and now Epic's announced that Unreal Engine is going to be integrated into the creative mode of Fortnite. So
Gotcha.
I like to look at them when I look at both Roblox and Fortnite, I look at it similar to like a spiral, but they both had two different starting spots. Roblox really started at the outside of this spiral, and as the tools have gotten better and the community has gotten more engaged in specific games, they've slowly came more close to the middle where, there aren't millions of games you're going to play, but there was a platform of games that are very successful, and they became this kind of core piece of what Roblox is, more towards the core of the spiral. And Fortnite's interesting because they want to come at the opposite direction. They got their users because of being Fortnite, being a game. And as they've released more tools and as they became more accessible to creators, they've kind of expanded. And now they're slowly, the hope here is at least they don't want to just be a game anymore. They want to slowly become a platform. And they have mini games on there. You can go in and play, your traditional prop hunt, or these smaller game modes that are, essentially just iterations on the Fortnite concept. It's still, 1v1 fighting or a free-for-all match and just a smaller map. But people are actively creating and building out more games, and all it really takes is one or two really successful iterations of Roblox of Fortnite to make it truly a platform where people are like, oh, there's actually a market here. But the other thing that Fortnite needs to do that I feel like they haven't really leaned into as much is the monetization for game creators.
Yeah.
They for influencers, they have their creator codes, and that's a great way to stimulate some microtransactions. But Roblox at its core is always about, if the platform becomes successful, you become successful because more people are going to spend money in your game, and it's more of like the tides lift all ships. For Fortnite, it's people are just kind of creating for fun. It'll be interesting to see how they really roll out developer monetization tools going forward, and that's where I think they both can be very successful together. And I'm excited to see how both of them kind of take their own user bases and turn these into much more diverse ecosystems.
Totally. Yeah. I kind of lump Minecraft in the same bucket of trying to build themselves out into a platform. Minecraft is doing a lot of other things as well, like more narrative focused content and things like that. So I think that's enough though to kind of explain. I think you've done a great job at explaining some of the shifts that are happening. So I really appreciate the way you explain that. Going more towards what you're doing at Konvoy, because I am interested to know what your perspective is at the ground level, because I understand Konvoy focuses on esports organizations as well as platforms and things like that. But could you talk a bit about Konvoy and where you're kind of directing your attention and putting your money in?
Yeah, so we actually don't focus on the esports organization space. Okay. We focus on what we consider to be the technology and infrastructure of video games. So we don't invest in game studios building single content or esports organizations. We like to figure out, what's that infrastructure layer that is going to make these sectors even bigger. So from like a esports side, it's a lot of, there's management softwares out there. There's, monetization strategies. And esports, again, is a very small percentage of the overall gaming market, where you're looking at esports and you're thinking, max, I'd say on the best case scenario for a $4 billion market, which I do think is very optimistic. But when you look at gaming as a whole, you're looking at, the low end of this is 150 billion and growing much quicker. So we like to really focus on the gaming side, but what we do really like to focus on outside of game studios is, who's building the next tools, who's democratizing access to creation. And this is where we look at other UGC platforms, and we look at them, we look at them and say, okay, how can you usher in a new generation of creators or a new type of creator? And how are you going to change the way games and content is built and developed? And then we look at a lot of other things like specific tools. We've made investments into engines and any type of streamer engagement type of opportunities. So that's where we like to play. And then if we do want to get content exposure, we also look at publishers where there's less of a single content risk for us, and we're betting on the experience of founders to be able to acquire and find content. Speaking of Roblox, that's an area where we think there is a large pool of content that is just under optimized. And so we're really excited about that, the publisher space and how that will grow, instead of in the sense of getting some sort of content exposure instead of going directly to the studios.
Totally. I'd love to know your perspective on like the no code areas, and because there's a big no code movement when it comes to software. And for myself, I'm not a programmer, but I work as a game producer. I'm around developers, and I wish I knew programming, but I don't, and it's quite hard. It's quite a steep learning curve. So the whole no code movement really interests me as a potential future where I could develop a game that I have an idea for without necessarily having the programming knowledge. Do you see that as the future of, not the future of game development, but just like an area of game development that will become more easier to produce games?
Yeah, this is actually an area that we're really excited about. This it goes back to the idea of democratizing access to tools, where and it kind of brings you, it always is something that where I look back at like the beginning of the internet, where the internet was just built on these protocols, like I guess HTTP would be a great example of this, where then if in the beginning of the internet, that was very you would need to learn how to code. You would need to understand some sort of software development. And then, people built out their browsers. They built out Chrome. You have a Chrome now, you have Safari, Internet Explorer, whatever it is. I look at the same way for game development, where, it's kind of hard to just hop into Unity or hop into Unreal and start building. So I think we're going to see a lot of resources going to people building the tools that make this easier. It'll all probably be built on top of existing engines or existing structures, but the no code movement allows at least platforms to kind of bridge that gap between the creator and the player, where I think Minecraft's a great example of this, where the game is built on creating, and you may not build a fully functional game, but it just people just hop in and build and have fun. And I think this is one of the downsides of Roblox, is that you still do need some scripting. It's not something you can just hop, their typical age demographic is going to hop in and start building. You're going to see more. You see there's studios being built just for building on Roblox, and Minecraft. You have the high pixels, but as these tools become easier to access through no code, where it's more of maybe a visual scripting language or drag and drop functions, then we're going to see a lot more people creating. And this is where I think just the more people creating, the better the ecosystem is as a whole, because people create what they actually want instead of playing what they're given. And I think that's something exciting to think about going forward.
Totally. I came from a filmmaking background. I studied at film school, and I see a similar shift to how Hollywood, for example, has evolved over the last 40 years, to how creators and vloggers have kind of burst into the scene and captured a lot of attention over the last decade through YouTube. And YouTube being the platform has made it, and I mean, technology with mobile phones and cameras becoming cheaper and easier to produce. I feel like there's a similar trend of people being able to create their own stories and just develop their own creative outlets through these platforms and tools that are a lot cheaper. And I'm seeing a similar thing in gaming at the moment. Are there any specific no-code kind of like brands that you think in the next few years will start to make a presence in the area, or do you think it will be someone like a Minecraft that just makes those tools easier?
So I do think people will build on top of these platforms, and Minecraft's a great example because they're open. They're a server-based game where people can build their own servers, create their own ecosystems, and have their own essentially have these own economies. But I think people are going to continue to build on top. I mean, you have a Build Box who just raised another $20 million this year. They're just building more no-code development tools. I think we will see some engines, because the one thing that no-code does lack is the ability to get extremely intricate with your designs. You can only do so much in no-code, but so this is why I think it'll come on top of certain engines. But for us, like we even we have Dorian, which is a narrative-based storytelling startup, and they've built their entire engine no-code, and then we have Hyperworld, which is exactly the same, but just in a different vertical within UGC. And so the tools can be built. And I think what we're going to see is that a lot of them are just going to pop up and then probably go for this platform model, because like I said, it's the games that are exclusively built on no code technology may not be a standalone game, but a platform of all of these games that are built has value. And that's where I think we'll start to see these no code engines built, and then allowing just an ecosystem to kind of naturally expand outside of it, but all directly from the engine itself. And that's where I think people are just going to keep on building the tools, because it's just the more creators you have, the better chance you have of building a successful platform, because you're not building the content yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting because games are such a deeper medium. Like to consume a game is a lot harder than to consume a post or a video. And to see it, to think of it for a game to go viral, for example, in Roblox, I feel like would really struggle to get the amount of reach than a video that goes viral on YouTube. It's not shareable. It's not easy to kind of open up a game in a browser, and for anyone that you're talking with to be able to open it up within a few clicks and be playing it. And I feel like that is an interesting shift that needs to happen, so that it's not you have to download an app to then download the game, to then download what you heard about. But anyway, so another area that I'd love to know your thoughts on, and because there was some news last week with Stadia closing down, Google's cloud gaming platform, what are your thoughts on cloud gaming and where that's kind of heading at the moment, where it's sitting?
So I'm extremely excited about the future of cloud gaming. Really bullish on it. I think Stadia was too early, and I think the value prop that they provided just wasn't that valuable. It was the games I already own, but now I can play it through the cloud on with Google's controller. And to me, that isn't enough. And it's why they had these studios. They were going to build games, but they weren't going to be. They need to be cloud native games. So the nice thing about cloud technology as a whole is that you have access to infrastructure and technology that you wouldn't have locally. And that's where we see this going, is that it's going to be more games built for the cloud, not just putting games in the cloud. And that's where I think Stadia has kind of gotten or lost track. But what I really like about it from a perspective of just putting games in the cloud is this does make games more accessible to more people. You don't need a super powerful computer anymore. You don't need a super powerful console or phone. The games can now be streamed to you. So now all we need to really focus on is connectivity and the ability to have a solid connection where you can stream a game, which is still a very hard thing to grasp, because locally with I use an Ethernet connection to my Xbox, which makes sure that I have very good latency, and I'm fine. But as the infrastructure continues to improve, and 5G becomes more more accessible for more people, then I think cloud gaming serves as a better way for people to access games. It's just, I think, we're not going to be worrying about downloads anymore. We're not going to be worrying about your local technology, and more people can play. But I think there is a massive market in this sector of cloud native games that are built for the cloud, not just put on the cloud.
Totally. I agree. And you talking about connectivity and then me seeing your SpaceX shirt makes me think of Elon Musk and everything that he's doing to get Wi-Fi through satellites projected to the world. And I feel like, yeah, that's definitely the trend that the world is going down. And actually, keeping on the topic of Elon Musk, I'd love to hear you talk about the movement that's happening regarding Ad Astra and Synthesis School and that whole movement. If you could kind of sum that up, I've seen bits here and there, and I'm actually talking to Anna on the podcast in a few weeks, which I'm really excited about. But I'd love to hear your kind of summary of that whole situation and where that's heading.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So I mean, I obviously would love to just let Anna talk about what they're doing at Synthesis School, but the thesis here is that we education just hasn't really had much innovation, and besides the fact you have your Coursera's and your Teachables, which are, or your Khan Academies, which I use, which makes access to information easier. But the thing is the way we learn hasn't really changed. And so the idea is that kids learn far better through games, and that's what's really interesting here. Is like, can we change the way we teach the next generation of kids by giving them something that they're more comfortable with, or something that feels more natural. And I think what this last year did, with people needing to be at home, and this distance learning movement, was that we figured out that a Zoom call is even worse than in-person lectures. So what gives teachers the ability to not only engage with their students, but also keep track of and make sure that they're all learning what they need to learn? And I think the answer to that is either games or these virtual environments where the game can be more adaptive, and there's more tools and more engagement than a traditional 8-hour day in sitting in a class. So and I know that Synthesis School is built off of the concepts that Ad Astra was built on. And I know I'm excited for what they're building. I think it's really interesting. I have talked about it more than once, because I do, or when I got started in venture and startups, was I founded a tech company. So this is actually like, it's an area that I've been passionate about, and we've been looking for companies that are working in this space and really trying to leverage the game infrastructure and frameworks that we have for a better education experience.
Totally. Wow. Yeah, I love it. And I hope that you're kind of satisfied in the next 5 years with how things move, because I do think it does meet a lot of different industries, and it has the power to change a lot of the way that we learn. It's such a huge topic. Education is huge, and it's going to be, even when these new initiatives come out, it's going to be decades before we realize if it works or not. So it's definitely a long problem to solve, but it is a really exciting time. So the last thing I want to mention about just different industries and platforms and things is VR and AR. There's so many big topics. All these topics we could talk about for an hour on their own, by the way. We're very much skimming the surface, but I do really appreciate it, because it's a great, I think it's a great brief overview of things to look out for this year. So talking about VR, I saw recently that Facebook have just announced that they're, it was mentioned that Facebook are developing, Apple are developing a VR headset, and I I'd love to know just where you see VR, because I worked for a company called Weta Game Shop, where we developed a game for the Magic Leap device. It was an augmented reality game. And back then I worked for them 4 years ago, and we thought we were on the cusp of a new generation of entertainment and a new platform, new devices and new hardware. And it seems like it's still early, and it's hard to tell exactly how much further away that future that everyone knows is coming is actually going to be here. And I'd love to know your perspective on that, and where you see the next few years being innovated on.
Yeah, personally, I'm extremely excited about VR. The thing about VR is that you have to look at it as a separate uh, as a separate console. So right away, the one thing that, the reason why PC or mobile does so well is that you don't buy a PC just to game on. You don't buy a mobile phone just to play games on. They have other things you use it for. And, PlayStation and Sony have, I guess, and now Nintendo, there's really not going to be another player in the traditional console space. But now VR is kind of looking at this new industry, and there are certain things you really have to get past before it takes off. First being the entry price. I think you can get an Oculus now for $300-400. That's still reasonably expensive. Where I need to find more value. I need to go to the next step and say, okay, what is this really worth it? So then I go to the games, and my first thought is, well, there's a library of about 50 games, like maybe, and I'd say very few of them are AAA quality. You can find a good one, but I'm not going to buy a new console for one game, or even two or three. When I look at my Xbox, I've played just this year probably 5-6 different games, and that's really important to me. So you have your initial price point, your library of games, and then after that, it's just who's playing. So with VR, it's kind of I feel like it's a somewhat, with a lack of games, it's kind of boring to play by yourself. You want to have these games where, I've played a few where there's been like a multiplayer setting, but it's still somewhat basic. You have a VR chat where you can go and hang out with people and talk to them in VR. I forget what the game was that I was playing the other day, but it was like a football game, but it was me and one other person. We were just throwing the ball back and forth, and it was really cool. He was across the country, but still the depth of that game, it wasn't enough where like I'm going to be able to get my other friends to play. You have to already be in the ecosystem to want to start playing these games. So I still think it's going to happen. I think Apple coming in is a great idea. We want more people. We have our HTCs, we have our Microsofts and our Facebooks, and now we have our Apples. And Apple's great because they already have the mobile ecosystem. So I think that can expand and maybe bring some games to the VR ecosystem. But I still think we're going to get there. I think people are really excited about it enough where it's going to just get better, and people are going to invest more money into it. But we just need, there needs to be a hit game, one that extends for years and isn't just a one-time hit and then we all move on, like Half-Life was.
Yeah.
Where it was I feel like it was all over Twitter and the news, and then didn't really hear about it after the people who had VR headsets stopped playing it. And totally. But I think it's going to keep growing. I think it was one of the top, Oculus was one of the top downloaded apps around Christmas. So, we're seeing people asking for, people want the technology. It's just, can we build out the ecosystem enough where people want to, be in it all the time and get their friends playing and actually see it as another form of game.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels like a car that's trying to start. It's kind of stalling a bit. Superhot was huge, 5-6 years ago. That kind of made some waves, made some conversation. Then Half-Life Alyx, and it's like they're testing out these different game mechanics, testing out narrative storytelling in VR, and there's definitely a lot of experimentation. But yeah, you're right. It's just that one hit that just kind of makes that switch for people going, okay, this is legit, this is great. And then once that happens, then every game studio is going to consider publishing on VR, and it's going to create a lot of opportunity. So that's definitely really interesting. We'll see how the hardware and everything evolves over the next few years. So talking about, there's two things I want to kind of hear your advice on, and that's advice coming from a game studio that is seeking early stage investment. It's quite a broad question, but I'd love to know just if a studio, if you want, you could be more detailed as to like what kind of game the studio is creating, but what advice would you give them for the best chance they have of securing early stage investment?
I think an important part of the pitch for game studios is really, what are you doing differently? So I think we really have seen gaming evolve, and whether that's a new monetization structure or a new genre of games, or are you going to, reskin or just build on top of other popular frameworks? Like what that pitch really is, why is this going to catch the attention of people? And sometimes it's just, hey, we know hyper casual is a very, very, hit driven market. We've created a structure to pump out games similar, at similar quality and at a similar rate that we think we can continually hit one after the other. Or it's, hey, we want to build a more social framework around this type of gameplay because it lacks monetization. The retention isn't very great. It's a very day one type of monetization, and then we want to actually make this a more long term customer lifetime. So we want to integrate social. We want to have a more engaging and great engaging process for monetization, and then there's got to be certain things that you're looking at where I'm not just like, oh, so you're just building the next Candy Crush. It's like, no, why are you building on top of Candy Crush? And why? What was Candy Crush missing that could have turned it into a 3x bigger than what it is? And I'm looking at that like, okay, that's super interesting. Or the other, genre is a very interesting area where we've like battle royale. It's not, I think a lot of people put it in that bucket with it's like, oh, Fortnite created battle royale, but I mean there was H1Z1 and there were other ones but they were just starting, and like that. Are you seeing trends happen where you're like, hey, I've seen some games get some popularity in this area, and we think we can do it better. We see people are playing over there consistently, but they're not doing this part right, and we're going to really expand what this genre can do for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. No, that's great advice. Building on top of an idea instead of just trying to remake it or do it slightly different, but really kind of evolving and showing growth as a medium is really important. If someone was to show up to pitch something to you, what kind of resources would you expect them to show up with? Like what documentation do you think is necessary for someone, if there's an indie developer developing something in his basement that he wants to eventually put out there, what formal documentation do you think is needed for him?
I really enjoy seeing their community engagement. I want to see that you built a community even before the game's released. This is something that I remember talking to Spellbreak in 2018, and that was one of the coolest things. It was one of the very first startups I've ever talked to while I was at Konvoy, and I got to access that Discord community and see them all and like get into their beta sessions and actually play with them. And I was like, wow, these guys are they seem to be really engaged in what you're building and giving a lot of feedback, and they're always the beta is always full, and like they all are excited about this. And I think a lot of the importance around game development is around building a community, building people that are supporting you before the game's even released, and taking their feedback and what they're saying about your game, and actually building on that and doing something, not just listening, but actually acting on it. And I think that's really interesting, because then you're telling me, oh yeah, there's, even if it's there's 200 people in this Discord channel, and on a weekly basis 50 of them respond and stuff, and I'm like, well, I mean, that's engagement. It's an early game. Keep listening and stuff. Game doesn't get built overnight. That to me is, I'm always really interested in that. And then I really just want to see whatever you're going after. I want to, we want to see data on it. Is this a genre that does have high spending? And if it does, how are you going to keep that? Or if it has low spending, how are you going to leverage your game to get a larger user base to kind of turn this into a volume game instead of a big spender game? So it's really figuring. Like, I just I want to see that you've done the research. You've really figured out exactly what you want to build, what that niche is, and what is going to make your game fun and successful.
Totally. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And coming from the other end, if I was say that I just sold my company and I had $100 million in my bank account and I was looking at investing in some gaming studios or gaming infrastructure, what would you advise me on for how to best educate myself or see trends or kind of where to put my money in?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people writing fantastic content out there, and I think you need to really start looking at where the market's going, where it's more of a creator centric market, which, you know, it's almost cliche to just say, you know, the creator economy, but that is what gaming is going towards, where people are the gamers are the creators now, and I think that's really important. So, I mean, I would typically just be, you know, keeping up with. I follow like random YouTube channels that just talk about the new games that are coming out, or, you know, people that have, you know, gaming focused newsletters or blogs that just are giving their own opinions on it, and then you can kind of build off of that. I think there's a lot of people in this space. You know, there are other gaming funds, and I think, yeah, and Twitter is honestly the best resource there is. You can follow anybody, you can get their quick thoughts. It's, you know, it is absolutely crazy that website is free. It is seriously one of the most valuable websites, and I've met so many people, and I reach out to so many people through Twitter and chat with them, and that's really how you learn. You get to see into what other people are looking at, and what other, you know, what blind spots do you have. And I think that's a great way to go about this. And I mean, it's just looking at what, you know, what are the big guys doing? Essentially, yes, what is Tencent doing? Basically, it's always like they seem to be so ahead of the curve. It actually is funny to me how they always seem to know. But I mean, it really is just constantly reading updates, and sometimes it can be boring, but, you know, sometimes you're gonna read that one paragraph talking about, you know, the next game that's coming out or platform that's coming out, and you start to see a trend happening, or, you know, showing its face.
Totally. If you had to recommend three like publications or people that you think talk about industry news well, who would you like to highlight?
I think, you know, Matthew Ball is probably one of the best, but he's he'll give you a breadth of knowledge on the entertainment industry. Really great guy to read about, especially if you like long form content. Rand Mo from EA, he has his own blog. He is also extremely intelligent. And then John Lai at A16Z, he always has great content as well.
Blake IR, I think.
Blake Robbins is very smart as well. I like to reply to him every once in a while on Twitter. He's actually, I would tell you, everyone, I think besides Rand, I don't know if you know if he has a Twitter. I have their tweet notifications on, like including Blake. I love to just, you know, when they say something, I like to just know what it was, and that's so that, you know, they're very smart people.
Totally, yeah. No, I completely agree with you, Matthew. I was very influenced by him last year, and all the kind of essays that he wrote, and very inspiring for me, and the essays that I hope to write throughout this year. So yeah, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing that. So we've got a few more minutes left, but I'd love to just talk a little bit more about you and your views on gaming. Like, what games are you playing at the moment? How did you get into gaming? Just a bit of history on you and what brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, so my story is somewhat unorthodox. I mean, I didn't go to an Ivy League school, and I don't have an MBA or an exit under my belt. But in college, I really got into ed tech. That was an area I was extremely passionate about, and I went through an accelerated program. Yeah, we got accepted as, I think, one of the only undergraduate startups to get accepted. Never raised funding from it. Me and my co-founder, who, you know, still great friends to this day, just decided, you know, one day maybe we'll come back to it. We put it off, and ended up going into just the finance. Was a portfolio manager for a multi-family office in Maryland, which is where I'm from. And I kind of got bored. I had that itch to get back into the startup space, but, you know, I had student loans. You know, I knew that, you know, starting another company was going to mean no salary. for probably a long time, and or at least being or even almost a negative salary. I had to put my own money into building this company, and so I decided that I wanted to get into VC, but I quickly found out that I wasn't qualified at the time. So I I spent months cold emailing any VC that would listen to me, and trying to get on the phone with all of them. And I finally had one, uh, Rockies Venture Club, which coincidentally is also based in Denver. And crazy enough, it has no connection to Konvoy at all.
Yeah.
But I ended up going to work for them as a analyst in their analyst program, which is it's an unpaid, essentially internship program. But I got to really learn from the partners there, and they were fantastic. Dave Harris, he's one of the partners there. He's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met and most genuine people I've ever met. So I owe a lot to him. But then that program ended. They weren't hiring smaller funds. So ended up in San Francisco working for another fund, which was a very small 3-month process. And I actually just happened to meet Konvoy there. Jason and Josh were coming out, and they were actually raising their first fund. And as soon as they told me what they were doing, I was like, you guys are gonna raise a fund to invest in the video game space? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, I will do anything to come work for you guys. And we talked over for next month or two, just keeping in touch. I do some work for them in the off hours, sourcing deals, and ended up being. And they were like, we haven't raised our fund yet, but if you want to come out, we would love to. Obviously we'll have a leg up on anybody else because you came before anything was raised. And I left San Francisco on a Friday, and I was in the office that following Monday, and that was before we had any money committed or any investments made. But we were just grinding. It was funny. We were working out of Jason's wife's office, and then then we ended up raising our first fund, and now we're on our second fund. So
wow.
As soon as I found out you could invest in gaming, I was going to do it. I was like, that's the dream job. And right now I'm playing Warzone. Since it came out, has been one I just keep going back. I keep going back to, but I've been really into Minecraft lately, and I just started Hitman 3, which is such a fun game. It's a great take on like a more casual gameplay where I don't have to feel like I'm rushing through anything. So that's awesome.
That's cool. And what games are you hoping to get into in the near future?
It's I've really been trying to make this a kind of a more natural thing. Yeah. I like these casual gameplays. That's what I am really excited about. I'm trying to think what is one I'm really excited about. Coming out this year, I know Fable will be out this year. We'll probably play that. But it's really just I've been playing like Cuphead is a super odd game that I really like. I'm so bad at PC games though that I haven't been able to beat it. So it's one of those games I keep coming back to.
Nice. I
think Skull and Bones is another one that's if it comes out this year, that'd be fantastic. But that's I really just kind of letting them happen. I've been wanting to get into the Nintendo Switch lately as well. But yeah, it is odd. I just Hitman 3 just was just one I just started playing again. Minecraft was another one I literally just downloaded and just started getting into it. That's kind of how it works usually for me. Yeah. Any shooter that comes out, I'll be playing. Like that's especially on Xbox.
Yeah, totally. I'm pretty big into Valorant at the moment, and that's pretty much all I have time for is just one game. Every so often of that. Getting into a big narrative game. I want to get into Batman Arkham Asylum. Just because it's been recommended to me so many times, but I just haven't. I'm not in the right mental space to get into a big narrative game like that. So yeah,
I know there's a new Batman game coming out, or rumored to come out this year as well. I think it's. I don't think it's based on the traditional DC universe, but I know I think they're supposed to have another one.
Yeah, cool. No, I'm gonna need to switch up my gaming habits to find some more time in my days to play some. I just thought of that post that you did the other day of the Nintendo Switch and the sales in Japan and how they've just ballooned compared to the other consoles. And I think, and you mentioned Tencent earlier and the investments that they make. I think that is definitely the kind of Asian market is definitely a bit ahead compared to the Western. You know,
Mhm.
they set a lot of the trends, and they can forecast a lot of the things that are going to become popular. I think that's another interesting area to be aware of throughout the year. See what moves they're making.
Yeah. I think it's easy to get stuck in your own world where, like, I'm an Xbox player, but outside of the US, Xbox is does not sell well. It's not a traditional console to buy. And it's super interesting to see, how successful things like PlayStation and Nintendo Switch are outside of the US, and then, obviously also successful in the US.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, well, I really appreciate all the topics that you covered today, and you helped me understand a bit more of the kind of big movements and trends. So thank you for sharing all of that. If anyone
Mhm.
listening is interested in following Taylor, you can find him on Twitter at Taylor B. Hurst, and his website is taylorbhurst.com. And I believe that I don't think it's very popular at the moment, but are you planning on posting more blogs and stuff there in the future?
Yeah, I created it it's one of those things where I want a place to express myself sometimes, but then you also get in this. I think I got in my own head and was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to post things yet onto this. So it's kind of, there's a placeholder. I'm hoping to post some things there. It's just getting the confidence to do it.
Totally. No, I think you have a lot of a great perspective of the industry, and you could definitely bring a lot of value to your followers. So please, yeah, if you have the urge to publish something, please just put it out there, because I'll read it. I'm sure a lot of the people listening would read it as well. So yeah.
I appreciate that, Carl.
No, it's cool. Thank you for coming on, and I look forward to keeping in touch with the games that you're playing and the things that you're sharing about the changes in the industry. So yeah, thanks for coming on, and have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, cheers, bye.